our call to live a compassionate life, bringing forth the soul of kindness that allows us to actually recognize those times when somebody's suffering and needing help, and it's always very near. We just have to have the eyes to actually look deeply enough to see it. So that's what we're going to talk about today. Seeing deeply, I like this idea. What is it to see deeply? Well, one of our authors that we're working with this month says, seeing deeply is more than seeing with our eyes. It is taking in any given moment with our whole being as a way of life. Staying devoted to seeing with the heart in a way that mixes our humanness, our divinity, and our encounters with whatever is going on in the world. That's what seeing deeply is about. It's a way of life that allows us to be wholehearted, living deeply in the moment no matter what. Well, I don't know about you, but that's not always easy because life sometimes is difficult. So then we ask ourselves, why bother? Why bother to see deeply? Why bother to pay attention to what's going on out there? Well, the biggest reason that we need to bother with seeing deeply all of the experiences in the world, the ones that are near, the ones that we're most aware of, and the ones that are not so near, the ones that are impacting the whole world. It's because every single thing that happens in one way or another affects us. We're all connected. We all are. We are interbeing. So when something happens, we better pay attention because it's going to have an effect on us at some point in some way. So if we're not willing to put in the effort to see clearly, to see beneath the surface of whatever is showing up, rather than meet it with compassion, rather than understand it at the level of the mind so that we can begin to integrate it into our hearts, we make it an enemy. We make these things our enemy. And so what happens is, however we're seeing whatever is going on around us, and when I say seeing, I mean the full gambit, the feeling part, the way we're with it. So whatever we're seeing is going to color our life experience. So if we're seeing separation, if we're seeing through the eyes of anger, if we're seeing through the eyes of judgment, we're seeing through the eyes of fear, our life experience is going to be very different than when we see through love, when we see through compassion, when we see through this energy that brings forth our capacity to see the divine sacredness of all of these experiences. And I gotta tell you, it's not always easy. And as is usually the case, when we choose talks and topics, somehow the universe gives me the divine curriculum that month. And I get to work it out as I'm trying to figure out what it is that I want to share. And you know what? I'm the one this month that needs most to hear this talk because I've had a tough month. Do you hear what I'm saying? Yes. So this talk is actually for me, and I've learned a lot in preparing it. So we actually have to ask ourselves, what is worth seeing? So when we're surrounded by difficult people, we're surrounded by difficult experiences, we're surrounded by a chaotic world, what do we choose to see? Because what we choose to see is what we choose to experience. Are we getting it? I'm all talk right now, not much practice. Not much practice. We're at choice all the time. We get to see things as half full or half empty in the Buddhist tradition. Half full, half empty. Half awful or half okay. And when we can do this, when we can actually step into seeing deeply beyond the surface of whatever that icky thing is that's showing up day after day after day and pushing our buttons, because right now I got a bunch of those buttons that Adyashanti talks about, those push me buttons. Doesn't take much. Doesn't take much. Push me, push me, push me. Somehow the universe knows how to create these situations for us, and you know what? It's all about our own soul's growth. It's all about our own journey. It's not even about all that other stuff. Something about this is for me in my experience, to look at so that I can be more compassionate, so that I can become real in the experience, so that and I love what one of the authors says, so that I can experience God through all the doorways that life offers me, so that I can actually see God in action in that icky thing, in that icky person, in that icky circumstance. That's what this is about. So that I can experience God through all of these doorways. And let me tell you something, sometimes the doorways don't look real bright. Sometimes they look scary, and they look dark, and they look long. Yes? You know what I'm talking about. We've all been there at one time or another. So what does it take to see deeply? Well, see my image behind me? Is everybody able to see it? I'll duck so you can see the bottom one. Yeah? I love it. It's from The Little Prince. The Little Prince was written in 1943, and it is one of the best-selling books that has ever been published. Millions and millions and millions of copies, translated in every language. It's a children's story, sort of, but I want to tell you something. The energy of this story is essential at the level of the soul. The message of this story is so important. And this is what The Little Prince says about seeing deeply. He says, here's my secret. It's very simple. It is only with the heart that one can see rightly. What is essential is invisible to the eye. And so I've given you this image that is part of the illustration from the book. The top, if you read French, which I actually do, but I don't speak it well, it says, my picture doesn't represent a hat. Anybody think the top picture is a hat? It represents a boa constrictor that's eating or has swallowed an elephant. This is part of the story, but this idea of seeing beyond the surface, what you think it is. No, it's not a chapeau. It's a boa constrictor digesting an elephant. And this is from a child's perspective. See, we've got to look beyond in all these experiences, just like the opening video. Look beyond our judgment that would have said, well, I bet that guy kept that ring. Why didn't he keep that ring? He could have, offered it for ransom, whatever. These ideas that we hold, we have these preconceived notions about how life shows up, and our idea of living deeply and seeing deeply is to rise above our normal ways of seeing things, our normal way of being present with whatever's going on. To have a full-hearted recognition of both the suffering, the hat, and the joys, the boa constrictor digesting the elephant. We have to be able to see it all of it, to undo our expectations of what it is, to let go of fixating on whatever that thing is so that we're open to see it in a new way, so that our experiences improve with the way we perceive our relationship with whatever's going on. Because what I know is, and this has been my journey this month, when I get all tangled up in the emotions of fear and anger and judgment and resentment and all that stuff, when I get tangled up in that, guess what? I'm unstable. I'm off balance. I cannot meet the moment with my full presence and with my radiance and with the energy of the divine, because I am distracted. So the idea of seeing deeply is to pay attention to how you're showing up. And when you catch yourself going to those places that make you off balance and tangled up in whatever's going on, our invitation is to have the courage and the determination to be calm enough, to be strong enough, to be stabilized enough, to look deeply within whatever that thing is, so that we are not paralyzed by it, so that we're not knocked off center, so that we can actually see through this doorway into the experience of God expressing through even that thing, whatever that thing is. It's a challenge, and I'm not here to tell you that it's an easy practice, but I am here to tell you that it does take practice, and it takes a willingness to put your energy in that direction, to notice, to be careful with how you are perceiving things. So what do we have to do? Well, first thing we got to do is when we see that thing or that's whatever that experience is, maybe we get all our buttons get really pushed over Obamacare. Maybe our buttons are getting pushed over, the nuclear discussion taking place around Iran. Maybe our buttons are getting pushed over, whatever those kinds of things are. Maybe our buttons are getting pushed over the behavior of someone in our family. Maybe there's a button getting pushed over who knows what. When we recognize that, we have to be willing to bring an innocent perspective to that thing so that we're not contaminating that thing with our old ideas. You see? Get rid of those old expectations, those old perceptions, and see it new for the first time. See it from a new way. Because if every time we look at that person or that thing and we bring all of our junk with it, our baggage with it to that, whatever that experience is, it's already contaminated. It gets very difficult if you're not willing to say, nah, that's a hat. I'm sorry, that's just a hat. I don't see anything there but a hat, a chapeau. You see, if we're not willing to experience every moment as new, it's sort of like the reset button, a do-over. So no matter how icky things might look, we get to have a do-over every time we encounter whatever that thing is. To go beyond all of our accumulated knowledge about whatever that thing is, all of our positions, all of our beliefs around that thing, I don't know, whatever those things are for you. Go beyond that, this knowledge that you've accumulated. In my situation, I know that I'm working with family, and every time something happens, I run and get the printed out diagnosis from the, say, oh, don't take it personally. Here's the diagnosis. Here it is. It's perfect. It's right here. This is what's happening. You know what I mean? It's like, don't take it personally. It's okay. We're okay here. Just don't take this personally. There's a diagnosis. Just let it go. Just let it go. Accumulated knowledge, but does that help much? No, we still get our buttons pushed. So what we've got to do, we accumulate all this knowledge. I can run and get that diagnosis as often as I want. But if I'm not going to be heart-centered, I'm still not going to change the way I see the experience. It's very hard because we get very stuck in the stuff of it. Do you know what I'm saying? We get very stuck in what we believe is right. Very stuck in our ideas about whatever it is, Obamacare, whatever. We get stuck. That's the way it is. That's the way it should be, and I'm going to stick to it. That's my story. But when we can drop into the heart, the mind can't go there. The mind doesn't go to the heart. And this is where we have the capacity to recognize, maybe this diagnosis thing is appropriate, and we can say, well, don't take it personally because of this, because this is our accumulated knowledge. That's useful. But unless we can actually go where the mind cannot go, into deeper seeing, into the wisdom of the heart, we are not going to be flexible enough to meet whatever this thing is on the surface. We're not going to be able to meet it. Because if we're rigid around it, if we're holding these expectations, we're holding these ideas, we're holding these beliefs, we're holding these opinions, we're going to shatter in the experience, and we're not going to be able to see the divinity or express our own divinity within it. So really, we're called, and it's not easy, we're called to constantly pull ourselves back, even if for a moment, to intentionally focus on what is pure, what is holy, what is highest about whatever the experience is. The oneness of the experience. Because when we see ourselves separate from whatever these things are, and we're judging it, we're not seeing deeply. Give people the benefit of the doubt and see them in a little better light. Give the experience the benefit of the doubt and see it in a little better light. Get a neutralized place with these things. Give everything the benefit of the doubt. If we're not giving things the benefit of the doubt, we're closing the door on the divinity. We're closing the door that lets us see the God experience in it. Now, what I know about this, and I've been working on this really hard, especially this last week, what I know about this is that the thoughts will continue to chat in the background of our minds. And every time we're aware of that, it's a new invitation to drop back into, okay, this is an experience that allows me to see deeply, to see the divinity in this experience, to know that it's not mine to figure out, that there's something in the universe that's making all of this work together, and I don't need to know how it's going to work out. And that's a biggie. That's a biggie. And you know what happens when I recognize in the moment that I can move into my heart with compassion around these experiences, around the troubles in the world, and around all of this diversity that shows up so icky from time to time? It invites me to be present with a sense of newness to whatever it is in the moment. I don't have to haul around the baggage of all the old stuff. I get to start fresh. I get to wipe the slate clean and start fresh from that moment on, in sacred relationship to whatever that is. See it in a new way. And you know what the bonus of that is? When I see the light in the experience, it allows me to bring my own light to that experience and to be that present. Remember, compassionate life requires that we have the capacity to see deeply with more than our eyes. And what we see, how we are seeing life, is going to color the entire experience of our human journey. We get to decide what is ultimately worth seeing and worth experiencing. And so remember what the little prince says. Here's my secret. It's very, very simple. It's only with the heart that one can see rightly. What is essential is invisible to the eye. Thank you for listening.